Yo, what's good, duelists? So I have been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently, especially with the Fire King Snake Eye and Pure Snake Eye deck, and I just wanted to make a video quickly going over some of the problems I think that the engine has and kind of like the end boards. Now, the biggest problem I see with these Snake Eye cards is that Link monsters suck. Cards like Heat Soul, Appaloosa, SP Little Knight, IP Masquerena are predominantly the best cards you can make with a Promethean Princess and Ambler Whale engraved, and sometimes you're making Zephyra for the unboard too to protect against cards like Super Poly. Now, this deck has kind of reminded me of Kashtira, because with Kashtira there would be cards that would counter, but it would kind of depend on how you decided to play it. Like, are you going to play into Nibiru by making a Rise Heart or not? And then it's like the flip of it right now, where you can do this awesome play where you play around Nib so well, you play around other hand traps pretty well. You do a Heat Soul, you draw a card, and then you get an Appaloosa for 1600 before you even used original Sinful. And this is facilitated by playing Snake Eye Oak in the Fire King deck. And you do your Fire King combo after you already have the Appaloosa for 1600. But there are some problems with this line. One, Appaloosa for 1600 kind of sucks. It's not that good by itself. And the other bigger one is if you get triple tactics Talanced, you're pretty much gonna probably lose. And a lot of people are ending on like Appaloosa plus Arvada, and that's it. And then if you just Talents, either of those monsters, it's usually just game. And that's just because your board is so underwhelming in the Fire King Snake Eye deck. It's really nothing compared to Tier or other decks in the past. It's not like an Infernoble board where you're making 4 Omni Negates and you just have no fear going into anything. It's like you still have to play, even if you play through 0 hand traps. You still might lose the game because of the power spells your opponent could have. We're going to look at some quick combos. This would just be with a normal summon Populace. It really could be any Snake Eye card because all of them kind of divulge into the same thing no matter what. But this is just to kind of like prove a point that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So we go Populace, summon Ash, Ash grab Populace, special Populace. We could have also done like an Oak play with Linkuriboh and got like the same amount of bodies. Then we go Sunlight Wolf, special to get our Flame Bridge back, make the Heat Soul out of the Linkuriboh, draw a card for free, then our Appo for 1600. Off just a normal summon Populace. Show a different way we could have done it. Go normal summon Populace, activate effect to make Linkuriboh, spell Trap Zone, same thing, Ash into Populace. We opened Oak here, Flame Bridge, activate effect, and then instead we could have made IP Masquerena, specialing back our 2, not getting the add back off Heat Soul, but still going into our Promethean Princess. So now we got Promethean Princess engraved, and we get the IP Masquerena, and we're going to end on Ambler Whale. But to play around Super Poly a little better, we make that into a Zealantis. Now we have Zealantis, Flame Bridge, IP Masquerena with these same exact cards. And you can't really say that one or the other is strictly better. I mean, you could maybe say that IP Masquerena is better because we didn't get to draw a card off the Appaloosa line where we make Heat Soul before Appo, and we're kind of playing way harder into Nibiru, but we are getting a lot more value with the IP Masquerena and Flame Bridge still on the field, and we're still not losing to Super Poly. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to decide which combo's better. Now, these two end boards are very different. They're basically, one's Appo for 1600, we drew a card, but we have no Promethean Princess in our graveyard. The other, we have a Zealantis that can maybe pop during the battle phase if we get our Promethean Princess back off popping our Flame Bridge, but then we'd have to summon the IP off that as well. But it does look like we get some more value. We did draw one less card, so like that Ash Blossom we top decked wouldn't be in our hand. And the reason that these boards are so different is literally because one played around Nibiru, I think, fairly better with the Appaloosa line. And the Heat Soul, your opponent would have probably nibbed you. Or so you would think that this would play around Nib better. The reason that this necessarily doesn't really play around Nib better is because when we make our Sunlight Wolf into our Linkuriboh, and we special our 2 monsters, I would think most people would nib there because they don't want you to get your Promethean Princess engraved. So when we consider that the Nibiru is already going to have been activated, this play kind of seems better because we get more value out of our cards. We get an IP Masquerena, we get our Promethean Princess in our grave, and you know, we don't feel as safe. Our opponent could just be like pro holding the nib. Most likely if they were doing that, they would have a infinite impermanence. But I would definitely much rather have like this end board that still plays around Super Poly just like the Apo does. Maybe, I don't really think it plays into talents that much more. And I like it better because we can actually go into SP Little Knight instead of Appaloosa if we want. Also, our Appaloosa would have more materials. The only thing really downside is the fact that we don't draw a card. And then one thing that's very crazy is like if we just have another fire in our hand, wow, how much this play with Populace changes. So we go Populace, normal summon, add the original, activate Populace, tribute. This time we're going to special Ponix, get to our Fire King engine. Then we're going to link these two into SP Little Knight. That might be crazy. Summon Garunix, send Arvada, Arvada special the Ponix, make Promethean Princess, special the Arvada, and then make that into Ambler Whale. And this was just showing if it was our opponent's turn, we could pop the Ambler Whale with Arvada as our first monster effect. Ambler Whale will special back the SP Little Knight from our graveyard, and then we can pop the Arvada with our Promethean Princess still, so that it doesn't actually like interrupt our SP Little Knight. If they do try to attack over our Little Knight, we can trigger our Ambler Whale, destroying our Arvada, or one card they control. So it's actually, what I would say, probably a fairly better board than this, because we did get our Fire King engine. You know, we don't get the IP Masquerena, but we're probably going to get our SP Little Knight. It would really just depend on your other cards in hand, but it is important to know that we could just get to our Fire King engine instead, and kind of end up on a reasonable board still. This brings me to my main point, that I just think that combo videos for a format like this probably would just not serve you well. Maybe showcasing that Appaloosa could have been like the IP Masquerena or Flame Bridge will be helpful to you, but there's still a world where the Appaloosa line was a strictly better play depending on the other cards in your hand. So with a deck like Fire King Snake Eye, I think combo videos are just kind of bad for the most part, and I would just recommend just playtesting the deck as much as possible. And then this was one of the reasons I wanted to make this video, was just because I played versus this random person on Dueling Book, and the whole time they're basically telling me that everything I'm doing is wrong. And you know me, I mean, when I test, I just prefer to literally just test the scenarios and see if it works well. And if it doesn't, like, so be it. If I lose, I don't care about winning. That's like the biggest principle I have for like when I'm testing, is like, I literally don't care about winning. I would rather just see the outcome, see what happens when I do this play. And for testing, like for the past day or so, I've decided I don't want to make Appaloosa at all. I think it plays too hard into talents. I want to see if I would just lose to talents anyway. So I do this play where I do like the Fire King engine. I have an extra body because I have the Black Witch. Make that IP into Promethean Princess. I'm going to change that IP out for a Dark, I believe, because this is where the end boards kind of get complicated with this deck. Like I said, I'm not trying to do the Heat Soul Appaloosa line where I waste an Oak. Not really a waste, because, you know, Oak, like, you can use it fast, but I just didn't see the need for it there. So instead of that, I'm ending on IP Masquerena, Heat Soul, so I still get to draw off my Heat Soul. And Arvada, the only thing I don't like about this end board that I think could have been better is I would rather have Heat Soul just be a rank 4 and then put that into Zealantis, so I also don't play into Super Poly. But the problem is this end board is like very weak. It's might arguably still be weak into talents. Like, ideally, this is one of the end boards that I've been going for a lot, where I don't play into Super Poly, I don't really play into talents. You kind of, like, I don't know, talents is just so good versus this deck sometimes. I feel like, because it's just like when you're lacking in Omni Negates, taking control of a monster, just like I said with Cash format, is just so powerful. But I think SP Little Knight is also really good this format, and I wasn't making it enough before. But like here I have the SP Little Knight, the Zealantis, so they can't actually go battle phase, and then I have the Flame Bridge Dragon. And the Kieran in hand is actually a really nice buff too. But this kind of plays through a lot of cards. Now, I'm not saying that like this is the end board that I'm going to make every time. It also changes game 2 and 3. Like game 2 and 3, I'm almost never making Appaloosa because of cards like Mind Control, Snatch Steal, Change of Heart, like Thrust that can search those cards. It's just like, I don't know, it just seems so easy, and that this deck can sometimes be better going second than going first. It's definitely different when you're playing into like pure Snake Eye, where they make sometimes 2 Omni Negates. Cards like those definitely get worse. And that's where my real gripe with the deck is sometimes it kind of seems like the Fire King cards suck. They can definitely brick you pretty well. Your Arvada can actually bait you, like I said with the talents. Them taking it, being your only fire, is sometimes just not as good as you would think. And then especially if you have just Arvada Appaloosa, it's like not as intimidating as you think. Like these are not Omni Negates. You're dependent on having the Kieran in hand, but also you're literally just like, I'm trying to play less and less of every card because it's just like such a brick. They don't really like make your end board more proactive. You're just summoning more generic Link monsters, and it really just like generic Link monsters just aren't as powerful as you think. Like IP Masquerena, SP Little Knight, Heat Soul, Promethean Princess, Ambler Whale, Zealantis, and Appaloosa is the best we got in terms of like offensive turn 1 links that we want to make to interrupt our opponent. These cards don't really do that much. They're pops. That's it, and that's why like a deck like Despia can play so well into it. That's why I think that in the 3v3 I just watched, like it wasn't actually just like destroying the format. You know, deck like Voiceless Voice was just going first, and they couldn't play through it at all. You know, none of them were main deck and droplets for sure. But I do think so far I've seen people too hyper focused on specific combos and lines that you would do, and also too hyper focused on the mirror match, where they're just going to get destroyed by every other deck by lacking cards. Like I see everyone's maining like Bell, so you know if you play a deck that Bell sucks against, it's gonna be dead. So if you're maining like 3 Bell, 3 Nib, 3 Droll, it's like there's a lot of decks that are just gonna beat you. And that's like my biggest gripe with the deck, and the fact that the Snake Eye cards, they're really just 4 to 5 bodies. At the end of the day, that's really all they are. You know, you can say Flamebridge summons back IP. It's like, it's not, Flamebridge isn't an interrupt, it's just summoning a Link 2, so it's like another body, you know? So it's like, you know, Flamebridge itself is 3 bodies, Ash is like 1 body, Populous is 2 bodies. It's like, you get a lot of bodies out of these cards, and you have a good amount of cards that do the same thing, so they play around hand traps really well because you can summon another one, and then that it doesn't matter that your first one got negated. But sometimes you can also just brick. If you appreciated a discussion like this, rather than just like a straightforward combo video that might go out of style and be useless in 2 weeks, let me know. I know some people might disagree with me, but I do feel like this format is going to be defined by like meta calls and just you know, which end board counters which cards that are being primarily played. And if there's a lot of talents, then I think everyone would have to shift their game. Just like if there's a lot of super polys in the format, you're probably not going to want to summon 2 fires on your end board. You'd probably want the Zealantis, right? But I just thought that this video would bring up a lot of good points of interesting things to consider, because I know I've seen a lot of discussion about whether combo videos are good, and at the end of the day, like, especially with me, since I go in and out, you have to play like a ton to get good. Especially in a format like this, you have to play a ton, or you can just decide to play like a shifter deck like Kashtira, you know, whatever is your jam. But I definitely think for like a Fire King mirror, you can get super punished if you're not paying attention. One wrong move can literally just cost you the whole game. Like if you SP Little Knight the wrong card, it's like literally every little thing matters in a format like this, which is kind of exciting that we would have good mirror matches. But it's also scary with, like, if I win the die roll, I don't feel like I'm winning guaranteed, and that's always scary. I want to make a broken board, right? But yeah, that's all. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Check out my Twitch, where I will be streaming daily, and peace.